Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. Today's guest is not my typical guest. And as I admitted to Scarlett Lewis, who's joining me today, right before we hopped on, I myself am a little bit nervous for today. I just want to say that out loud because I think that will allow me to relax. As everyone knows, I love this podcast. I love interviewing people. I love talking to moms that have experienced all different types of tough times. And this tough time is one that I just have a really hard time coming to terms with. So I will absolutely give Scarlett Lewis, our guest here, the floor in a moment. But for a little bit of background on Scarlett, she is an activist, an educator, an author. She has founded an incredible nonprofit, and this is all after her son Jesse was murdered in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, which for me, I remember where I was when I found out the news of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. And so I feel quite honored to have you here, Scarlett, today to talk more about Jesse and to talk more about your journey and where you are and what you're doing to really turn this pain into some sort of purpose. So first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jordan, very much. And if you think about how you learn and grow in life, a lot of times it is through the very difficult parts of your life that drop kick you out of that comfort zone and into your growth zone. So that's where I found myself landing squarely there. And I've taken that and done something with it.
So I first want to start with Jesse. Talk to me about Jesse. Who was he? Who is he? Because I feel like he's still so much inside of you. And then from there, I would love to have you tell your story of where you were when you got the news.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesse, I like to introduce him by saying he was born 11 pounds. So the first time that I saw him, I walked to the nursery and all these nurses were gathered around the window taking pictures. And I walked up behind them and I said, "What are you taking pictures of?" And they said, "There's this enormous baby that is trying to crawl out of his bassinet." And that was Jesse within the first 24 hours. I have pictures of him squished to the bottom, just, absolutely exhausted after. And by the way, that's how he was his whole life. So just very active, very just always seeking fun and sweet and cuddly and just absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Jesse, talk to me a little bit more about his personality. What was he like? What did he do with his friends? I'd love to paint that picture as well.
So I'm a single mom and I had two boys. He had an older brother and we live on a farm. So this is the kind of lifestyle that I wanted my boys to have. So we've got horses and all kinds of animals. And so my boys were outside, they were getting dirt under their fingernails. So anytime, and a lot of times, if Jesse would have friends over, they would be out in the arena and because I would be there too, but riding horses and riding ATVs and just, having a lot of fun, very active. I actually have no doubt that he probably would have grown up to be in the military because he always had camo on and he was always playing with sticks and, just every ounce a boy and very confident. His dad took him around. His dad's in construction, so took him around to a lot of his jobs. And so he met and worked with alongside on these jobs a lot of men. But at the same time, he was so incredibly sweet and considerate and, of course, brave and brave way beyond what I could have ever imagined.
So you wake up one morning and you take your boys to school. I'd love for you to fill in the rest of kind of what that day looked like.
Yeah, actually, well, so I woke up that morning and JT had gone to school. Jesse's going out to meet his dad at the end of the driveway. And of course, I'm running a little late, feeding the animals and my little children animals and, trying to I had a 45-minute commute. So Jesse's dad is there and I'm walking him out to the car. And I turn around to give Jesse a hug, and I notice that he has written in the frost on the side of my car, remember, it's December 14th, Connecticut, "I love you." And he had drawn hearts in all my windows. And realizing that was one of those life's moments, I told him, "Don't go anywhere." I ran inside, got my phone, came back out. I remember taking him by the shoulders, putting him by that message, taking a picture, and then taking a close up of the message, giving him a hug and sending him off. And that was the last time I ever saw him. And of course, went to work, and very shortly after had people coming up to my desk saying, "Hey, there's been a shooting in Sandy Hook." Then we realized it was at a school, then we realized it was at an elementary school. And it was awful. We heard that a teacher got shot in the foot, so my mind immediately went to, it's probably a domestic issue. Jesse's going to be scared. The parents were supposed to come and pick the kids up, but never, really never in a million years, even when I got to the firehouse and, most of the kids by then had already been taken by their parents, and there was a long list of missing people. And even then, it never really occurred to me, or maybe my brain just wouldn't go there, that all those people were dead.
Wow. So you get the news, you leave, you go straight to the school. Like, how do they communicate to parents? What were the protocols at that moment?
Protocols. Well, let's see. Somebody that I worked with heard over the news and came and told me, and then getting little bits and pieces of information to the point where I felt like I should go back. And I'm talking to Jesse's dad, who's even further away than I am on a
Yeah.
job. So I am driving, and I have friends calling on my cell phone, kind of giving me updates. Oh, you're supposed to go to the firehouse and that's where you're supposed to pick them up. So I did. And honestly, I mean, because I'm just a normal person, things like that don't happen to me. I was not terrified
Yeah.
until I got in the vicinity of the school and I saw what was going on. I mean, there were cars lining the road. I had to park probably a quarter of a mile away. And I saw, parents tearfully, hugging their kids and running back to their cars. And there were helicopters overhead and military vehicles and all sorts of sirens and police. And I started to get really nervous. I went up to the first official person that I saw, which actually happened to be a dad of one of JT's soccer friends. And he's a first responder. So I said, "I'm looking for my son, Jesse Lewis." And he said, "Oh, I think he ran over to the house next door to the firehouse. And there's this little cute little yellow cottage house." So I said, "Thank you." So I ran over to the house and knocked on the door, and this man answered. And I said, "Was Jesse Lewis here?" And he said, "I think he was, but I think he ran over to the daycare on the other side." So I'm texting his dad and I'm saying, "Hey, I've got it here. This is where I'm going. Don't look in those places." I sent him over to the daycare. He said he's not there. I actually really didn't see him there until later. He actually went to the hospitals to check out because we weren't getting information. There was no information.
Yes.
All that we heard was, if you have a loved one that you can't find, then go into this back room in the firehouse and put their name down on a list. And of course, I'm like, putting a name down on a list? I'm just going to find my son and leave, that's ridiculous. And I saw a lot of the people that had left the building. I don't know, in my mind, this is a really weird memory, but somebody brought in pizzas and offered me a piece of pizza. I'm like, I don't want a piece of pizza. I just want to find my son. But I remember there were a group of teachers sitting around eating pizza, and I was asking them, "Have you guys seen my son?" And they looked at each other and went like this, like kind of like, "Zip it." And by the way, it just annoyed me. Like, I think your body does this beautiful thing where you go into shock. So I was just annoyed, I just want to find my son. And that went on for hours, by the way. We
Wow.
were told no information. We were told that they were
Wow.
hiding, that it was going to take hours to find them. And for me, that made sense because I could see him taking a small contingent of kids out into the woods surrounding the school, and that it would take a long time. But come to find out, they were simply identifying bodies. And in the meantime, I had actually even had my 12-year-old son, who was in lockdown in 7th grade, come to the firehouse where he asked to, and I allowed him to, the worst day of our life. Because, I mean, that kind of shows you, I really had no idea what was going on. They gave us no information, and they didn't make the announcement until there were some parents that were really getting angry, and they were really forced to.
Wow.
And yeah, there was no protocol. It was chaos. And unfortunately, it's happened so many times since then. I hope that there's a protocol now. There shouldn't have to be. I can't even believe I'm saying that.
So you find out that he was murdered. And what details, if any, emerged after that about what happened, and kind of do you have a sense of how everything transpired?
Well, I mean, at that point, no. We just were told he's murdered, and I said, I wanna leave with JT. I don't wanna stay here." And so we were driven out to the car in a white van because there was a lot of media in the front of the firehouse, and I remember going there with my mom, and JT went with my stepfather. I remember getting to my car and looking in the back seat and seeing that seat, the child seat that he sat in, and thinking, "I'm never gonna use that again. I don't need that anymore." It was awful. Went back to my mom's house. We got drips and drabs information from we were actually assigned a state trooper. The families were getting threats from the very beginning, and that was something that I didn't really know. Maybe my family did. It was just too much for me to even comprehend how or why. So I just appreciated having that trooper there, and he would drive us around, and it felt safe, especially in a time when it felt really unsafe. But we found out that it was a former student who had shot his mom before leaving the house that morning and came to Sandy Hook looking for soft targets. It was this same elementary school that he had been to. And it was just very, very, very devastating, as you can
Yeah.
imagine.
I always remember the shock of Sandy Hook, and the parents I remember being interviewed saying you never would have thought it could happen here, a quiet neighborhood. And so for something like that to happen at Sandy Hook, it truly was a reminder that these things can happen anywhere
I said to anyone.
to anyone. As you are so inspiring for so many reasons. I mean, it's hard enough to have a child murdered at school, in elementary school. I mean, it's those words are just so hard to say because they just feel completely unnatural and
Well,
unreal.
because we shouldn't be saying them because they're all preventable. What happened to me was preventable, and that's why I'm speaking out about it, because I want everybody to know that and to know that there's something you can do.
So that's where I was going next. It's like you are going through this, as you mentioned before, there was shock, and it sounds like there was immense sadness and I'm sure anger. And through all of this, you have become an advocate, a voice in a different way than I think a lot of people would have expected you to go. I was
Mhm.
reading an interview you did back in 2018, and the quote was something along the lines of, I think the reason that we haven't been able to solve the school safety crisis is because we're not thinking in terms of like the actual solution, and that the majority of solutions being discussed aren't actually addressing the cause, they're addressing the effect. And so I am just so blown away by what you've been able to build in this grief, in this all the emotions that come with that, to build communities around not gun safety per se. And I think you've used this term before. I really liked it in a previous conversation we had. It's not the hardening of schools, but actually like almost like the softening of humans and understanding emotions. So I would love for you to share more about how you got to this, how you decided that this was going to be what you were going to zero in on, and this was going to be what you channeled to
Mhm.
honor Jesse and to hope to make sure this doesn't happen to it again.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was not gonna do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So I knew that what we were doing before wasn't working. And so all of that, not interested. I actually looked at the pathway to violence used by the Department of Homeland Security that starts with a grievance and then stair steps up, ideation, preparation, a few other stair steps to the attack end. And I thought, wow, everything that everybody's talking about is focused on this attack end. And then I looked back and I looked at how we have handled other diseases of despair in our society, like drugs. And, in the 70s, there was the war on drugs. How about bullying? Anti bullying, mental health. We wait until our kids are mentally unwell, and then we, treat them in symptom clusters and give them medication. And in reality, none of that addresses the root cause. That's just putting a band aid on really a festering wound. And, when you look at all these things, they're simply getting worse. So when you're reactive, you learn by mistake
Mm.
because hindsight is 2020. So you're always behind, and you're always behind watching things continue to you're never catching up. So I thought, how are we going to be able to get ahead of this? How are we going to be able to directly face and deal with the suffering and the pain and the lack of self-worth and self-esteem that is at the root cause of not only violence, but substance abuse and mental illness, the grievance end of the
Yeah.
pathway to violence? So I decided to focus my efforts there. And I'll tell you that that's the backstory to it. But in reality, when I came home for the first time several days later, I found a message that Jesse had written on our kitchen chalkboard shortly before he died. 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. And it blew me away because with, everything that I was hearing and all the anger and the blame and the this and that, I realized that was the solution right there. It's so simple. If Adam Lanza had been able to give and receive nurturing, healing, love, in other words, if he had been connected and felt belonging, if he had felt good about himself, the tragedy would never have happened. People that feel good about themselves don't want to cause harm to themselves or others. It's hurt people that hurt people. And so that just blew me away. And then, of course, we found out from our trooper that Jesse had stood up to the shooter that day, and he had actually very bravely sacrificed his life to save 9 of his friends as a 6-year-old in his first grade classroom. And, with those 2 things, I thought, I have to up my game. I have to have the courage that Jesse showed, quit my job, and to dedicate my life to keeping our kids and educators safe and well. Have to do that. What happened to Jesse was 100% preventable. And so it's just not the way we think normally. We're reactive as human beings. Our brain is wired to keep us safe. We focus on the problems. We only have so many resources. I've been advocating to put some of those resources. I mean, I'm not, against hardening schools. That's for sure. Unfortunately, we need to do that. But actually, Sandy Hook, the whole district, had all of the hardening measures in place. They had the latest technology. We know that that's not enough. You actually have to have an essential life skills program similar to Choose Love in place. That's what addresses the grievance end. That's what gives kids and adults, by the way, the ability to be able to manage difficult situations, discomfort, pain, so that we can grow from it and not be taken down by it.
Scarlett, I want to come back to Choose Love. And although you've already described beautifully kind of the foundation of what you've built in the foundation in a nonprofit, and how do you take care of yourself?
I take care of myself very well. I know that self-care is really important. And I think about even in the early days with information that was coming out, I was very guarded. I sent my parents to the FBI meetings, and they lasted for a year while they were doing that report because I didn't want to hear all the details. I was processing my son's loss, and I would tell my mom, if there's something I need to know, then come and tell me. But if there isn't, I'm just processing my son's loss. I was very careful with myself. And even today, I do things that take care of me for sure. I mean, one thing, I live on a farm, and this is my dream farm, even though it's very small. I have a beautiful garden, and I have horses, and I spend time with them every day. Even if it's just doing chores, I get a lot of joy out of that. I have chickens. I get to go and collect eggs every day and cook them for myself. I have a dear friend who's been giving the boys and I massages for years, for decades really now. And so she comes over, and I've been in therapy my whole life too. That's really helped as well. I feel like that's a huge privilege to be able to do. And so I take very good care of myself. You have to. You have to, so that you can show up as the highest and best version of yourself.
You do have to. And it's so impressive to me that you actually have done that, because so many people claim to know how important it is, but then don't do it for any number of reasons, whether that's resources, time, or simply, you get caught up in the day-to-day hustle bus of life. And here you are leading the charge of the Choose Love movement. You're out there, you're talking, you're sharing Jesse's story, and you actually are taking care of yourself. It's so impressive. And at the risk of sounding condescending, I am so proud of you. Like, Scarlett,
No, I'll take it. I'll take it.
I mean, but truly, like, do you ever say that to yourself? Like, I know in a million years you could have never imagined to be in this position. And
No.
do you ever take a moment to say, gosh, this is not the life I thought I'd lead, but I'm damn proud of the life that I'm like choosing to pursue as a result of it.
Well, you know what? The first thing is what I've learned, and actually now I know the research behind compassion is that when you help other people, you help and heal yourself. This isn't something that I knew, and it's not the way I live my life. I mean, I tried to be a good person, but of course now my entire existence is focused on service. And so that helps and heals yourself too. And I will tell you, there was one time, because I'm go, 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 because this is a matter of life and death. And I just want this to get into as many hands as possible. It's no cost. And it's no cost because it was priced out of the market for my son and his murderer. So I'm just trying to spread awareness. And I appreciate you helping me do that, Jordan. But I will say one time before the program was even finished and released, I had a book that I had written called Nurturing Healing Love. And there was a teacher in North Carolina, and she was taking each of the chapters, she was turning them into lessons, and then she was sending me all of her classes in one sentence, their response to that after she taught the lesson. And that was so beautiful. I would appreciate that. I think I even posted some of those on Facebook. Then the following year, she wrote me and said, I just wanted you to know that I was greeting all the kids on their way in off the bus saying, because it's a new year. And I noticed this one little boy that was in my 4th grade class previously, now in 5th grade. And he came through the door. He'd been having such a hard time last year. I mean, she was telling me a little bit about his story and it was heartbreaking. And she said, I never really thought that I really made a difference with him. I really tried, but I wasn't sure. And he walked through the door with this green band. So we have these green bands with the formula on them that we teach. And this formula is what pulls all of our programming together. It's universal. It's for kids. It's for adults. It's for all ages and stages. And he had this formula, this band still on. So he'd worn it all summer and he came back into the school year with it. And so she said, hey, I see that you still have the Choose Love band on it. Why are you wearing this Choose Love band? And he said, because I look at it and I see the word courage and I remember that I have the same courage that Jesse showed, and it helps me, show up in life. I sat back and I started to cry. And I really literally think I heard Jesse's voice say, Mom, if this is all that you did with all of the work that you've done so far, if this is the only thing that you did, it's worth it. You changed, you helped someone. And I really let that sink in for the first time during that minute or two that I was sitting there. And then I was like, I know, Jesse, but we can do so much more. And there's so much more kids we have to reach. So it only lasted a few minutes, but I try to have those micro moments when I get some feedback like that.
I relate to that in so many ways because there's such purpose in what you're doing. And so you can get so caught up in how many people you're reaching and are we doing enough and just kind of chasing more and scale. And if you reach one person, you're changing a life. It's how I feel at Support Now as well. Like, do I want to grow? Yes. Do I want to help millions more families? Yes. But if we can help one family, what a blessing.
Yeah.
And so I connect with that on a founder level, certainly. I think it's great that you, even if it was just for a few minutes, could actually say, you know what, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And you're doing a great job.
I think every day that's really important, just to pause and just to compare yourself to where you've been and not where you're going, because where you're going is the sunrise or the sunset. And if you set off today, you would never make it. But if you compare yourself to where you've been, then you get refueled.
I couldn't agree more. It's the power of presence in a world where we're always told we need more, and to, whether that's looking more, buying more, consuming, like we're constantly being told it's not enough. To be able to kind of have the reference point of where you've been is such a healthier framework. As we wrap up, I want to help spread the word about Choose Love so as many people, as many educators, school systems can become aware of this program and how wonderful it is. And to your point, it's free. This is so wonderful. Where can people find out more? How can they become more involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I am just a huge fan of Support Now, and I want to do
Thank you.
everything that I can to that too. It's so important. But parents that are listening out there, your child's safety and well-being at school is your responsibility. And so, the hardening stuff, that's really important, but you also have to make the call and ask if they have a comprehensive character, social, emotional development program. Ask them. Ask them what the name is. It should be able to roll off their tongue, how many times a week they teach it, and if there's a parent component. And all that should just be forthcoming. And if it's not, they're not doing enough. So literally, you can go to chooselovemovement.org and you can register and see everything that we have. You can send your administrators or teachers that link. They can click on contact and get in touch with me, and I will walk them through it, or someone on my team. We're here. I mean, we're in existence to love and support teachers' efforts and to keep kids and educators safe. And this is a necessary part of school safety. It's the number one most overlooked aspect of school safety. And not many people are talking about it. And so that's why I am. And I wish that I had known about it. I didn't, but you can learn from what I've learned through my tragedy, and hopefully nothing like this will ever happen to you. Really important to make sure that your schools have this. Even if you're teaching it at home,
Yeah.
there are a lot of kids that don't get it, and you want those kids to be learning it, and then your kids to be practicing and reinforcing those skills and tools right alongside them.
Amazing. And truly, sky's the limit. You've accomplished so much already. So I think what you're doing is so incredible and getting to the
Thank you,
root and the
Jordan.
heart of it. And by the way, this doesn't just set up your schools to be more safe. It allows your children to grow up to be more prepared for the real world and all of the emotions and conflict that can come as we mature and as we get out into the real world and realize that things don't always go the way we hope. That resilience is a part of life. It's not something that can be avoided. So I just think as a general rule of thumb, it's not just to your point, it's not just about schools. It's really for parents in an effort to make sure you're developing your children in a way that gives you the confidence that they're prepared for the inevitable blows that will come their way. And that's okay.
That's right. We teach post-traumatic growth, and we teach how to learn from, grow through, and be strengthened by tragedy instead of being taken down by it and possibly those around you. It's an incredibly powerful program that teaches how to have healthy relationships, how to think critically, how important curiosity is, and gratitude and forgiveness and compassion, and all around courage, having the courage to show up with your best forward, tell the truth, be the best version of yourself. It's really a great program, and really a lot of it comes from my own personal healing journey as well as my son's. So it's pretty amazing.
Thank you, Scarlett. I look forward to many more conversations with you. Again, I am so grateful for the chance to interview you and to shine a little bit more of Jesse's light to everyone. So thank you.
Thanks.